What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I am back in the continuation of what I've kind of been loosely dubbing my fixing series. If you're unfamiliar, this is basically where I walk through something in 5th edition that I think needs to be altered, adjusted, and or fixed. I've done a couple of different subclasses before that were playtests, the Unearthed Arcana. We did a whole class in and of itself and the Sorcerer, and now I'm going to focus on a new subclass. This one is a published, official one, and that is the Arcane Archer Fighter subclass. So if you want to see how I would fix it, or what I even think is wrong with it in the first place, stay tuned. Alright, so if you're unfamiliar with the Arcane Archer, it is a class, a fighter subclass, that basically weaves arcane magic into their archery ability. I don't know about other editions, but I can say from my personal experience, this was a prestige class back in 3.5. And while it had a lot of other abilities, and it may have even been limited only to elves, if I recall, but either way, I think this does a relatively good job of replicating that class, or at least making an archery arcane user, if that makes sense. So, let's talk about it. I actually really like this subclass a lot. I don't think there's too much that needs to be tweaked to, quote, fix it. I think there's two major things. This one also did have 2 iterations in the Unearthed Arcana before we got the final one published in Xanathar's, and I don't think there was too much that needed to be done, or that we could... I was like looking back to see if I remember there being something that existed in a previous iteration that I thought was better, and for the most part, I think the final version is pretty much as polished as it needs to be. Right, at level 3, you get proficiency in 1 of 2 skills and a cantrip. I like that. I think those 2 cantrips, Druidcraft and Prestidigitation, work pretty well. Prestidigitation's kind of magic-y, Druidcraft's kind of rangery, naturey, and you're an archer, so maybe they're going for that vibe. I'm not really sure why they went with Druidcraft, but works for me. And the crux of your whole class is this thing called Arcane Shot. Basically, you get to twice per short or long rest do a thing called an Arcane Shot. And basically, all of your class's abilities are keyed off of this thing you get at level 3. When you fire an arrow from a shortbow or longbow, basically, it's... I guess you could almost treat it like a smite or a sneak attack, if you will. Actually, I guess it's more like a smite. So when you hit something with an arrow, you can choose to expend one of your arcane shots, and you have a list that you can choose from. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The only time you don't have to choose it after you hit is if it's something that doesn't require an attack roll. Like some of them are like, it does something, and then people make a dexterity saving throw, and then it's based off of that. So you get 2 uses of this ability that you can regain on a short or long rest. And you basically get to choose 2 different arcane shots at level 3, and then you get an additional one at 7, 10, 15, and 18. And then at 18, it just improves overall. So basically, you have 8 total shot options based on the 8 different schools of magic, and you get to pick 6 of them. And that's your whole class ability. You know, we can talk a little bit about some of the others. So level 7 is Magic Arrow, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Level 7 is also Curving Shot. When you make an attack with a Magic Arrow and miss, you can use a bonus action to reroll the attack against another target within 60 feet. At 15, you get a thing called Ever Ready Shot, which is when you roll initiative and have no uses of Arcane Shot remaining, you get 1. And then we already talked about at 18, everything just gets kind of improved. Everything does a little bit more damage, does a little bit more something. And then there's your list of Arcane Arrows. You can see this, right? So like Bursting Arrow here. Does 2d6 damage in an explosion. When you hit 18, it goes up to 4d6. And that's kind of the general theme. Things that do damage do more damage. Things that didn't do damage now. And that's basically the class. So my fix number 1 is relatively simple. I think what you should do is change this 2 uses of this ability, once per short or long rest, to intelligence modifier times per short or long rest. We've seen similar mechanics in things like a cleric, which certain clerics have abilities that they can use wisdom modifier times per long rest, and I think there may be some other mechanics similar to this, but I would say just tweak this and make it intelligence modifier times per short or long rest minimum 1. So the only way I think that people would really argue with this would be if you're trying to be an Arcane Archer with a garbage intelligence score, which is possible, right? No one can tell you how to play your class, and that's entirely an option that you have. So if you're playing a character with a 12 or lower intelligence score, then this version that exists here in the published source works well for you in that you're getting one more use per short or long rest. If you're playing a character with 14 intelligence or higher, then nothing changes or it only gets better for you. So I feel like intelligence is a pretty I don't think I'm wrong or a minority in this, and that intelligence is a pretty weak stat in 5th edition unless you are one of several classes that uses it as the cruxes of your ability. Eldritch Knight Fighter, Arcane Trickster Rogue, or a Wizard. Other than that, intelligence doesn't get a lot of use, so this would be another way to kind of boost that. Not only that, but all of the spell DCs of your Arcane Shot are 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your intelligence modifier. So theoretically, if you want to have a stronger Arcane Archer ability, you would need a boosted intelligence score. So this would benefit you and kind of reward you for making your intelligence a higher score. Clearly, you're going to be a dex-based class. You're using archery. But, you would basically could throw points in dex and constitution, and then that would be your main thing just to do these. But if you boost your intelligence, it makes your DC better. So why not reward people by giving them a little bit of extra stuff? So, again, Arcane, you can use this ability, intelligence modifier times, you regain all expended uses when you finish a short or long rest. The wording, you get what I'm saying, though. So typically, if you happen to, say, get yourself up to a 20 intelligence, you're a fighter, you're going to have a lot of ability score improvements. That would be 5 uses of this per short rest. I think the DMG says on a typical adventuring day, you should possibly get use of maybe 3 short rests, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember off the top of my head, but that means you could essentially use your Arcane Shot ability 3 times, or a total of 6 times per day as it stands, assuming you're able to get 3 short rests in a whole day period. If you don't, and let's say you only get 1, you'd only get to do your whole class's cool ability thing twice a day. If you only had, if you had 0 short rests, or 4 times a day if you had 1. I guess it actually would have been 2, then a rest would have been 2 more than a rest. So if you had 3, you'd have 8 uses, because I forgot the initial 2. But this, I think, makes your class a little bit stronger. It synergizes better, I think, with itself. And again, it makes other items, things you may find like a Headband of Intellect, an item that may not be super useful for people. If you track one down and happen to find one, it boosts your class's ability a little bit further, giving you that 19 intelligence, giving you 4 uses per short rest. Now, I will say that at level 15, you do get Ever Ready Shot, which is if you roll initiative and you have no uses of Arcane Shot remaining, you regain 1 use of it. And that's actually extremely similar if you look to the, if you scroll down here and we look at the Battlemaster Fighter, they get the exact same thing at level 15, which is if you roll initiative and have no superiority dice, you gain 1 back. However, the Battlemaster Fighter gets, how many do we get? You start with 4 superiority die, you get an additional 1 at 7 and an additional 1 at 15 for a grand total of 6 superiority dice as a Battlemaster Fighter. Now, I guess you could definitely argue the things that a Battlemaster Fighter can do are less damage and less overall effective as the different things an Arcane Archer can do. However, the Battlemaster Fighter has the option to take that 1 martial adept feat to gain additional martial, additional superiority dice, which is a thing they can do. Arcane Archers don't have that option. I don't really have a confidence that we're going to get feats in the future that will let the Arcane Archer get extra uses of their Arcane Shot and choose an additional Arcane Shot option. That's also a way you could potentially try and fix this, is allow that in your campaign. A feat that someone could take that gives you a use of the Arcane Shot feature, and then also let you choose one from their list, or if they already have it, it just gives them an additional shot and additional choice. That's something you could do, and I don't think that'd be a relatively broken or unbalanced use of a feat, that you homebrew feat you could add. But I think that adding intelligence modifier times per day on the Arcane Shot just makes sense. And I'm going to apply that if anyone wants to play that at my table. And my last little fix here is the magic arrow ability. I think the ability is fine. I think it's just worded wrong or worded poorly. So it says, you gain the ability to infuse arrows with magic. Whenever you fire a non-magic arrow from a shortbow or longbow, you can make it magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance and immunity to non-magical attacks and damage. The magic fades from the arrow immediately after it hits or misses the target. Why? I don't understand. This is worded so specifically. And I can't think of any reason why, based on the class abilities that you have, what benefit does it have to just so specifically word how this works? So in my mind, the way you fix it is say, whenever you fire an arrow from a shortbow or longbow, it is considered magic for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance. That cleans up that. There's no real weird way you can construe it one way or another. It makes the fact that curving shot, the next ability you get at level 7 that says when you fire an attack roll with a magic arrow and miss, it makes that make perfect sense. There's no question there. And we see other things like this in like a monk's level 6 unarmed strike ability where it says for the purposes of overcoming, your attacks unarmed strikes are considered magic for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance. We see the same thing for a moon druid and their natural attacks for their moon, their wild shape forms. The eroded version of the Beastmaster Ranger has a similar thing where their animal companions' attacks are now considered magic for the purposes of overcoming damage resistance. That wording and that mechanic already exists in the game. Why not just apply it to this magic arrow ability? I don't understand why the wording is so specific. It doesn't need to be. I think when you word it this way, it just opens you up to like questioning why or what the specifics of that is. What is the downside of firing a magic arrow? The only thing I can think of that they might be very specifically trying to do is that if you fire an arrow from your magic bow, then someone else could pick up your magic arrow, and then it's a magic arrow that they could fire back. But I feel like the way I'm wording it, that doesn't make any, that doesn't matter. Any arrows fired from a shortbow or longbow that you hold are considered magic. Therefore, the arrow is magic when you fire it, not if someone else picks it up off the ground and shoots it back. Because, the fact that the magic fades from the arrow immediately after it hits or misses the target, the way I'm describing it, I feel like it's implied. Maybe that's the reason why, that it's too much implication. I just feel like it doesn't need to be worded this way. And the fact that we're having this discussion about it just seems like it's just worded vaguely, or it's worded precisely, which I guess is the problem. So much so that it makes me question why it's worded that way and why it couldn't be more general. I don't know, maybe I'm just harping too much on one simple feature, and I'm sure I'm going to hear about it from you guys in the comments, and that's fine. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think about my 2 simple fixes to the Arcane Archer? Make Arcane Shot intelligence modifier times for short rest, and just reword magic arrow so everybody can understand what it means. Nothing too crazy other than that. I think the class is relatively well done as it is. If you are an Arcane Archer, if you've played one out there, and you haven't made it to level 15, I'm sure you're very much hurting for your Arcane Shot ability. But I am curious, if you've played one and you enjoyed it, do you think the suggestions that I've made would make the class broken, and that you'd have it potentially 1 to 3 more times per short rest? Is that too much? Doing more of what your class does that makes it unique seems like a no-brainer. It allows you to do the thing you chose the subclass for more often, and therefore you'll feel more like you're emulating that class. At least that's what I think. But if you've played differently and let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know what you think of my fix overall. Do you think there's anything else to be fixed? Am I crazy to even touch the subclass at all? And then if you also have any other suggestions, do you like this series? This is something I'm trying out. It's kind of experimental. If you like this and you want to see more of it, please let me know in the comments below. Let me know other classes or subclasses or races or things you think that I should try to fix in 5th edition that need that or warrant it. I'm curious what you guys think. If you think that this is awful and I should stop doing this entirely, let me know that too. Anyway, guys, if you don't know, I stream on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday here on our Twitch channel. There's a link in the description. And you know, if you're new, if you're just finding class, there's been a whole bunch of you lately, and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and click that subscribe button down there, and you know, hopefully you enjoy the content that I put out in the future. And yeah, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, for better or worse, and I'll see you next time.